Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel What If Season 3, Episode 8 finale video. That's right, this is the end of the series. It has been canceled. Maybe they'll bring it back in several years in a different form once they've introduced more X-Men, Fantastic Four, big characters, so they can do way bigger episodes with way bigger characters. But they did try to end with a bang, basically minting a bunch of new gods in the Marvel Universe, and a bigger god in an even higher sense. There are a bunch of lowercase g gods in the MCU, like Thor, for instance, Zeus, the other pantheon that we saw in Thor Love and Thunder, but there's really only one capital G god, and they got pretty close to actually minting a brand new one in this episode. They also brought back Kit Harington's Black Knight character from the Eternals. That's right, we got like our first Black Knight cameo scene since that Eternals post-credit scene. But the funny thing about that is that you can't really say that they followed up on the post-credit scene. Like, it's still one of the lost Marvel post-credit scenes that just goes nowhere right now. Because the version that we saw in the episode was actually in a completely different universe. It wasn't meant to be the one we saw in the MCU Eternals movie. Jon Snow, Kit Harington, Black Knight still knows nothing. There was even a version of Captain Carter who became the Black Knight in another universe. So I'll talk about all the different versions that they reveal at the end of the episode, because like there's a version of Kahori who became Apocalypse, a version of Captain Carter who also became Wolverine. They really wanted to go out with a bang with some of their Easter eggs in the episode. There was also a really big Deadpool cameo scene. We finally got some more Spider-Man. So there were like a whole bunch of cameos that they baked into this because it was their last big episode. They wanted to go out with a bang. So we'll break it all down, and what happened with everybody in the episode getting all these cosmic powers being turned into, essentially, gods for a brief period. And what happened to Captain Carter, who seemed like she actually turned into a much more powerful god. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We're still getting those Spider-Man episodes in a few weeks, and we have Daredevil Born Again episodes after that. I'll be doing videos for all that stuff too. But the episode title was just What If, which is meant to be a reference to the entire premise of the series, the question that the Watcher asks at the beginning of each episode, and what the Eminence asked last week. What if the Watcher interfered? What would ultimately happen? Like, what if they actually did all this stuff? Which is also how they end the episode too. One of the other big changes to this week's episode, to the actual intro, is that they actually do the intro at the very end of the episode. Probably the biggest question first, did Captain Carter turn into the new god of the Marvel Universe, or the Marvel Multiverse? Because it did seem like she turned into everything, like she had the story backdrop in her, kind of like Eternity does inside the MCU, or like the other universes. But there's already an Eternity in the universe where they were, because it was Strange Supreme's universe, and the other big twist is they explain when he sacrificed himself to reboot his universe at the end of Season 2, he became the Eternity of that universe. That's why when they show you Strange Supreme, the outline of him looks like the starry sky, like you see the universe inside his outline. That's meant to be the way they depict the Eternity character in the comics, like it looks like his entire body is the universe itself. There is meant to be a living embodiment of the entire multiverse itself. It kind of seems like that's what happened to her. In the comics, that's called the firmament. Like in the current Marvel comics, they're in the middle of the 8th firmament, so it's like the 8th version of that character. The 8th version of the multiverse. So that's kind of what the Watcher is talking about at the end of the episode, where he says, it sucks that she died, but it feels like she's watching us somewhere, like someone is watching me, like a higher level being is now watching me, and that is basically Captain Carter. That's what happened to her. Basically making her like the new most powerful character in the entire MCU multiverse itself, like not just the one single MCU of like the movies and the TV shows. They actually got into some power scaling during the episode. I know people are always curious about like who is the most powerful Marvel character at any given time. There was a little bit of that going on in the episode where they actually explained that. The only being who's more powerful than the firmament, like the living embodiment of the multiverse, is called the One Above All, and he's meant to be the actual capital G god of the entire of Marvel Comics. One of the ideas with his character, though, is that he's so powerful that you, like, never see him usually in stories just because he throws the power scaling way off. Like, it wouldn't make sense if there was a character that powerful in the story. So he does exist, he has shown up before, but very, very rarely. And I know there's going to be a bunch of questions about all the exiles after the episode. Like, are they going to keep all their cosmic powers? Like, are they just going to be super OP? I do not think they're going to let them keep those powers. Like, they'll just go back to being normal exiles, saving the multiverse from basic threats day to day. Just starting at the beginning of the episode, though, the Marvel Animation logo is the same, but they actually start with a flashback to show you Uatu becoming the Watcher for the first time, like he's taking his oath for the first time and getting his cosmic level power. All these lines here are meant to be the sum total of all reality, all timelines branching out. They visualize it kind of like the end of Loki Season 1 in Kang's base here, and the end of Loki Season 2 with his multiverse tree. All because in the comics, the Watcher's home that they stay at here on the fifth dimension is meant to be the apex of all reality, so they can see all of time and space and manipulate it in like a 3D kind of way. That's why it looks just like it did during the Interstellar movie, because they visualized time and space in a 3D kind of way. The follow-up question to that, why do they get their powers turned off when they're inside Strange Supreme's universe? The power scaling that I talked about, they clarify in the episode, when they're inside a particular universe, the version of Eternity in that universe can manipulate reality at will and basically becomes the most powerful character, except for when the Watchers are still in the higher fifth dimension, or like God Loki is tending his multiverse tree also in the fifth dimension. In those places, they would then be more powerful than Strange Supreme as Eternity in his universe. The Eminence basically explains how to be a Watcher to the Watcher and take his oath so that he gets his powers. When he says the Watchers have to sacrifice their own names, this one is the main Watcher of the comics. His name is Uatu, as he says later in the episode. Then he says, what if he's not good enough for the job? He says the name of the thing inside the thing, like they say the what if phrase a couple times during the episode. Explains their highest law, give up everything, basically become a monk, and only observe things in pursuit of upholding the natural order of things, never interfering. Once he takes the oath, he gains his powers and the observational plane, his multiverse base. There are a couple of shards they show with clips from previous episodes, mostly from Season 1 episodes, like Doctor Strange before he became Strange Supreme, Loki, the Hydra Stomper Steve Rogers from Season 1, Episode 1, Captain Carter, of course. All to set up the twist right after this with the cut to where they've captured them and they're holding them on trial. His second task that he gives to him is also to understand the entire reason behind existence and reality over billions of years, like just come to the realization for why everything exists. Which they also try to pay off with the speech that he gives the Eminence at the end of the episode when he becomes the Watcher of Strange Supreme's universe. They set up the joke where he says he will never fail him and then cut to him saying exactly that, you have failed me, how dare you? It's a little bit like that joke, you had one job, like everybody looking at Loki from Thor Ragnarok, you had one job to do. Then they reference a bunch of times, not every time, but a bunch of times he's interfered. Stephen Strange is meant to be the Strange Supreme from Season 1 and Season 2. Remember, he sacrificed himself to basically restart his universe and became the eternity of his universe, which is a big plot point at the end of the episode. The Watcher tries to justify his interference, saying that it actually led to the creation of new timelines and new realities for them to watch, growing reality ultimately instead of shrinking reality. All the metaphors of gardening in the tree are meant to be references to Loki's multiverse tree. Riri Williams is from the recent episode. I already did a video for that earlier this season. She turned herself into the new Vision. Kwai-Jun Fan is the boy that he helped in the recent Shang-Chi episode. He's a reference to Iron Fist from the comics in the late 1800s. He is a canon character. Jun Fan is also meant to be Bruce Lee's birth name, so they're kind of doing both an Easter egg for comic book, older, ancient Iron Fist, but in the comics themselves, that character was also an Easter egg for the real-life Bruce Lee. So it's sort of like an Easter egg for an Easter egg. It was basically the Marvel comic book writer saying, what if Bruce Lee became one of the previous versions of Iron Fist? If you're not familiar with the actual Iron Fist origin story, like how he got created in the comics, he was created based on real-life Bruce Lee. The creators talked about naming him Iron Fist because they had just watched a Bruce Lee movie, Fists of Fury, and during it, they had something called the Ceremony of the Iron Fist. At the time, during the big Kung Fu craze, Bruce Lee around the world was known to have iron fists because of the way he trained, thus they named this brand new character that they created Iron Fist. When he mentions interfering to save Reed Richards, it's not clear which version of Reed Richards or which Fantastic Four team he saved. He mentions Nick Fury, but he doesn't say which one. There have been many different Nick Furies from different universes in previous episodes. Then he even mentions Madison from She-Hulk. When he says how she spells her name in that weird way, that's actually a line of dialogue that Madison had during She-Hulk. He says his most dangerous intervention has been Captain Carter, showing that they've captured her too. I think this is also to set up the twist at the end of the episode where she basically becomes the entire multiverse. The Eminence says that they're basically going to break all their rules in order to try and uphold all their rules, which is meant to be a very ironic statement, like the rules are important, but we're not going to listen to the rules right now for a second. Then the new god form of Ultron shows up, isn't able to kill them, but does slow them down for a little bit with his new cosmic level power. They escape with the Exiles, and he winds up sacrificing himself to basically hold them back briefly, even though it doesn't really work. When they visualize them traveling through dimensions, it's mostly meant to be a reference to 2001's Space Odyssey, with the main character traveling through dimensions evolving into a higher being. Then the Eminence basically wastes Ultron like it doesn't even faze him, and because they have control over all reality, time and space to a very fine degree, they basically stop the Exiles in their tracks and just Batman themselves into their ship. This is where they try to get the help of Strange Supreme, who's become Eternity in his universe, hoping that he'll be able to control them once they're inside his universe. But they don't quite make it there before the other Watchers basically down them on the planet here. Their whole battle on the planet here feels like it has vibes of the classic 1980s Secret Wars 2, like big giant moon battle on a planet with them just going at each other with cosmic power. We will probably see a version of this during the live-action Avengers 6 Secret Wars movie. Their first big attempt is really just to set up the twist with them becoming Watchers themselves and getting cosmic power. Like, they can barely touch them without getting the cosmic upgrades. I think the way they're explaining this logically is that not just that any character anywhere in any universe could just walk and say the same exact words and get the same exact cosmic power. One of the Watchers has to be doing this ceremony with them, and it's basically granting them a portion of their power, like sharing their cosmic power with them. Some of you also might have detected the sly reference during this too. The twist here with them taking the oath, getting all the power, and saving their lives is meant to be a reference to Haley Atwell's character in the Mission Impossible movies. At the end of the recent movie, she basically does the exact same thing, saving her life from Kittredge by basically joining the IMF organization and taking the oath that Tom Cruise works for in those movies. But they all basically get cosmic powers, cosmic armor upgrades, and cosmic weapon upgrades too. Notice that all their armor also have celestial symbols all over it. He says his name from the comics, Uatu. They continue their fight, and it's a much more even fight this time. There's obviously a lot of hand-waving going on here because it's like a 25-minute episode, so they're like, we don't have time to fully explain all this stuff. They get all these cosmic powers, then they beat the hell out of them. Typical half-hour animation logic. There are a couple Easter eggs during their fight too, like one of the Watchers tries to pull the same trick that Infinity Ultron did during Season 1, eating the entire galaxy, but Kaori stops him before he can do it. The planet blowing up here too feels like another Emergence reference from the Eternals with the Celestials this season. They actually have a couple references to the Emergence throughout the season, just more Eternal stuff in general. Uatu stops them from killing the other Watchers. Notice the gauntlets they have on them also look a little bit like the Infinity Gauntlets too. Feels like a little more Easter eggs here. Then the three Watchers combine their powers, claiming they're going to wipe all of them from existence in every reality, every timeline, everything they've ever done. Kang has referenced doing stuff like this in the past, and the Loki series referenced this a couple times too, like the TVA has this ability. As they start doing it though, you notice that all the color starts to bleed out of the frame to black and white, as if all of reality for these characters is being erased. During this scene, there were a whole bunch of Easter eggs for alternate versions of huge characters in the comics. So there's a version of Storm who became Black Panther, obviously big relationship with Black Panther in the comics, so riff on that. We will probably see them together in live action eventually, once they introduce a brand new T'Challa Black Panther. There's a birdie who became Archangel from the X-Men, one who became Nova, and one that became more of an actual duck like Howard the Duck comics. Some of the Kahori ones went a little bit harder though. There's a Kahori who became Apocalypse, one who became more of a straight up Native American warrior without powers, one who became Captain America. Notice her suit has wings too, kind of like Sam Wilson's Captain America wingsuit. The purple hair and the robe here looks like a version who became Agatha Harkness in a universe, and then there's just another version who joined the X-Men. There's the Captain Carter who became the Black Knight, another version who became Sabretooth, that one goes real hard, another version that became Wolverine, obviously if you're going to do Sabretooth, you're going to make her Wolverine too, a version who became Elektra in a more comic book accurate suit, a version who became Deathlock, super deep cut, they did him on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and a version who got the powers of Thor wielding his hammer and his armor. Captain Carter's able to use her new cosmic power to counteract their effects long enough to sacrifice herself and stop them. But like I said, for a second, it looks like she turns into the multiverse itself, like she becomes pure space and time. And even though she seems like she dies sacrificing herself, all the references the Watcher makes to being watched by someone else, like there's always somebody out there watching, and that person now is meant to be Captain Carter in this new form that she's taken, like this new multiverse form. But because her cosmic version of the S.H.I.E.L.D. still exists, it means that all the other Captain Carters out there in the multiverse still exist. Like, she didn't get wiped from existence or anything like that. Also revealing she was able to, while that was happening, push them the rest of the way into Strange Supreme's universe, where he is eternity and he could basically nullify all the powers of the Watchers. I already explained how the power scaling works here, so like while they're in his universe, Strange Supreme as eternity is the most powerful being, but when the Watchers leave that universe, they're more powerful than him. God Loki would also be about the same power level as the Watchers too, as like a fifth dimensional being now. Then Uatu spares the Eminence and the others, and them sitting on the moon here having the little chat looking at the planet here is also meant to be a reference to the comic book Watcher Uatu, whose base is on the blue side of the moon where he sits and watches the main 616 universe all the time in the comics. Maybe we'll see a live-action version of him or a reference to him during the Fantastic Four movie. Then he tells the Eminence to become the Watcher of Strange Supreme's universe and does a version of the intro as the outro. When he ponders if there's life after death, we actually know the answer to that because they got into that during Moon Knight. For regular beings, like lower level beings, their consciousness just travels to another dimension based on their belief system or if they have a contract with a specific god. When it comes to higher level cosmic beings though, especially ones that are abstract entities, for example, you can't really kill ideas like you can't kill Mistress Death, you can't kill Death, you can only trap her. Then he does a slight twist on the intros with the outro in a whole bunch of cameo scenes. They start with the 6-arm version of Spider-Man from that era in the comics. That's also where Morbius came from too, so I'm surprised they didn't try to reference that during the Morbius movie. A version of Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, who's a samurai warrior, a version of Riri Williams, who became the Punisher, Gamora, who I guess got married to her Star-Lord, like she's in a wedding dress it looks like. This is a version of Blade, who became the next Moon Knight. We'll actually see a version of him during the Marvel Zombies TV show, but this is what his Moon Knight suit looks like during that. Then there's a Thanos who became Weapon X Wolverine. That's totally wild, like where's that episode? I would love to see an episode based on that guy. This is a version of Kingo who became Iron Man in his universe wearing an Eternal Celestial version of an Iron Man suit. It actually looks a little bit like the Eternals costumes in the comics too. This is a version of Kamala Khan Miss Marvel who also became the Wasp. A version of Hulk who became Sorcerer Supreme in his universe, but the white beard also kinda makes him look like the Maestro, like Maestro Hulk who became Doctor Strange. Howard the Duck, who became Scarlet Witch, we actually saw this character during the end of Season 2 in Strange Supreme's lair. This was like a dragon or a dinosaur who became Hawkeye, like a universe where dinosaurs evolved and all the Avengers characters are dinosaurs or dragons like this. This is Jubilee from X-Men 97, who became the Herald of Galactus, a Silver Surfer in her universe. This seems like a Skrull who took over Captain America's life and then had a version of Infinity War in his universe because he has the Black Panther shields on his arms. This is the actual Dane Whitman Black Knight dancing with Cersei from the Eternals, the only Black Knight cameo scene, like I've said, we've gotten since that Eternals post-credit scene. I've already talked extensively about what Marvel was planning for that character and how that's all changed, like a lot of the stuff they were going to do with him got cancelled. This is meant to be a more comic book accurate version of Deadpool, Maximum Effort. This looks like a young version of Hela with Thor's hammer and graffiti on it because she did wield Thor's hammer in the MCU before Thor did, before it had the enchantment on it. The graffiti on it also feels like a joke about it not having the enchantment on it. I think this is meant to be a Shang-Chi who became Star-Lord and also got the 10 rings. There's a Wild West version of Loki with horns, a hat, and a 6-shooter. This character with the crown and the white here is actually a version of Scarlet Witch, but from the Marvel vs. DC crossover comics. For those of you that want to see them do a project like that in the future, like a Marvel vs. DC movie, in those they actually combined characters from Marvel and DC into one single character. They called her the White Witch. This person at the end is kind of blurry, but seems like a Dormammu reference who turned good, but let me know if you think this is somebody else. Then unlike the previous episodes, they don't have any special scenes from the episode itself over the actual credits. But like I said, this is basically the end of the What If show. When it comes back, it'll be like a different form in several years after they introduce more X-Men, Fantastic Four characters, and they can do way more stuff with them because they've already done the twists in live action. But if there's any other Easter eggs or references during the episode you spotted that I didn't talk about in the video, write them below in the comments. And big reminder that Spider-Man episodes are going to happen in a few weeks. I'll be doing videos for that. The Daredevil Born Again episodes will start after that, so there'll be a bunch of stuff happening in the next couple months. Be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. Everybody click here for my Daredevil Born Again trailer video, and click here for that Spider-Man series trailer. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.